Alright, what's up guys? So this is take 2 for my Jupiter in Libra video, and I definitely need to knock this out sooner rather than later, besides the fact that I'm, more than fashionably late at this point. We're transitioning soon into Scorpio season, and I can kind of already feel that mentality taking hold of my Mercury kind of facets, so my mentality, my thoughts, and everything like that. And it's definitely not harmonizing well with the themes that I was going to discuss and what typically is associated with Jupiter. And so, anyway, Jupiter is one of the 7 orbs, and it is one of the benefics. So Venus and Jupiter are supposed to be benefics, meaning that they're the good fortune planets, and it's supposed to be the great benefic. So I argue that the pendulum swings both ways, because you need to understand what dark is and light is and negative and positive is. Therefore, there's pros and cons to everything. That's the as above, so below kind of natural law, idea. So that being said, I'm not going to spiral into a negative stigma with Jupiter, because that's what I started doing last night, and then I started double checking my notes and thinking maybe I need to do a positive side of Jupiter and then a negative. And then I started getting really worked up and looking at aspects for future events, and I was clearly going into Scorpio mode, and that's when I realized that I'm just like, nope, just stick to without the script, because I was really tempted to do it, but I'm just gonna, just wing it. I have Mercury conjunct my Sun right now. I should be able to just wing this really easy, just like I did with the transit video the other night. So anyway, Jupiter. Jupiter is supposed to be expansive, excessive. The first thing I think of, like, if you were going to associate, like, Pictionary kind of thing with Jupiter, I think of a magnifying glass. It amplifies things, it magnifies things, it brings things to light, or it brings it as top priority, or something that you just cannot avoid. You become consumed, engulfed, regardless if you want it or not. Because, if something's positive or negative, that's all, determined by perception. So, somebody who really likes something, if they get a bunch of excess of it, they'd be excited. But if there was somebody there that either didn't like that person having it, and or they didn't like it themselves and they had to be subjected to it, it would be hell for them. That's an example there. So anyway, we'll specifically go over each house, meaning for each sign. So when I say sign, I understand that you have signs for every planet in your chart, and it's obviously more complex. I would hope that most people that are watching my videos are way beyond that and understand that. So when I say we're going to focus on the signs, specifically when you're looking at transit influences, and Jupiter being one that is usually an exact year duration, it's a very even number, easy to kind of just generalize things. So we apply the sun sign and the rising. So the rising is your ascendant. You obviously would only know that if somebody's told you, or if you're familiar with your chart. Then if you go off of your rising sign, then wherever Libra rules whatever house in your actual birth chart, that's where Neptune will be. Not Neptune, sorry. Jupiter. Jupiter and Neptune in ancients was the same. Pisces and Sagittarius. So, brain fart there for a second. Okay, so anyway. So, when I say Aries Sun and Aries Rising, some people will just go, okay, I'll just go off my sun sign, or I'll just go off my rising sign. Me personally, I use both. So, for example, I'll talk about mine before I go into all of the signs. So, I'm a Libra Sun and a Gemini Rising. So, instead of just assuming that since I have a Libra Sun, that means that Jupiter's in my first house, so it's going to be expanding myself, I'm going to be growing as a new person, or I'm going to be changing, or just improving myself, or traveling, or moving, or moving up in places, like success and good fortune, etc., etc. That does give me quite a bit of insight as to what to expect. Also, unfortunately for all you Libras out there, if Jupiter's ever transiting over your first house, it means that you're going to expand, not just on a metaphorical level, but a physiological level. And I've been really anxious about that. So, aka, you're going to gain some weight. And if you have some health issues that pertain to weight, keep that in mind and try to nip that in the bud before it gets too bad. Jupiter's only been in Libra for less than a month, and I've already put on like 10 pounds, and I'm already, I'm gonna go there. This is not gonna turn into like a rantathon. But anyway, so yes, I do get a lot of information just fixating on Jupiter being in the first house with my sun sign. But then look at my Gemini. So specifically, basically what's going to transpire is that Jupiter would end up being in my 5th house of creativity, romance, and children. So I'm going to be growing, expanding, or developing a new sense of self by channeling events or activities or whatever scenarios that specifically have to do with romance, creativity, and children. So just, to give a little context so you understand, I'm an off and on foster parent, and right now I'm kind of empty nest syndrome because I had some kids transition, and I also just gotten that really nasty aspect between Pluto and Venus killed my last relationship, as it did with many people. And with the kind of person that I am, and Jupiter going into Libra specifically, that's supposed to be, for relationships and love and all that, and that's the 5th house romance. I've already moved on. I mean, that anybody who knows me, that's not a surprise. And it's potentially serious, and I am in the process of planning on relocating to farther away than I've ever been. So that coincides with Jupiter being in my 1st house, expanding, traveling, or, a new sense of self, a new experience. And it's specifically because I'm moving to where my boyfriend is. Romance. You see that. So, and I also am going through my Saturn return right now, and so apparently, I remember reading in one of my, annual horoscopes, I read a couple years in advance just to see what I get an idea of what's going to happen. And it said that I'm really not going to get my astrology practice off the ground, and at least making consistent activity and profit off of it until this time frame. So specifically, when Jupiter went into Libra for me, that's supposed to be the engine starting up for me to actually get the ball rolling with that. And that's just re-emphasized by Jupiter transiting over my 1st house, because I'm a Libra. So now we'll go into, I kind of just did Libra now. So, and Gemini rising technically, but I'll just go ahead and go through some of the signs, and I just will keep it short and sweet for Libra at least. So Aries, typically you start at the 1st house. So since the polarity is Libra, the 7th house is going to be where Jupiter's at. 7th house rules over relationships with others, law, marriage, and any kind of partnerships that have to do with like business or anything like that. Any of your associations, whether it be platonic, acquaintances, intimate, either legally binding or intimate, just personal, not family ties, but just personal in general, is going to be funneled into that house. So Jupiter, you just applied the verbiage of Jupiter to that. So expanding on that, fixating on that, you're going to be engulfed in it. You're going to have to deal with it whether you like it or not. You might be having some good fortune or opportunities in business or social networking. You might end up benefiting from some sort of associations or affiliations with other people that you know that will end up, being beneficial to you. And Aries Sun, whatever your rising is, if you do know that, you obviously look at the house that, like I did, and you'll be able to see how those different kinds of relations or interactions with others for the 7th house theme will manifest. Then we move on to Taurus. So Taurus, you're going to have Jupiter in your 6th house. And this is probably one of the only times that I'll get kind of super negative. And I don't say super negative, but the 6th house rules health, daily routine, work and service. Okay. So me being kind of a hypochondriac and me specifically having my Mercury and Pluto in my 6th house and having some squares to that as well, I do fixate a lot on health concerns, and I am like, you know, kind of like a closet hypochondriac to an extent. I get really worked up about things. So I'm projecting more or less, but be aware that Jupiter physiologically, like I mentioned with Libra, when Jupiter's transiting over your 1st house, that it has to do with growth. And so Jupiter specifically rules over the liver and any of the organs that help to detoxify any waste per se, and also growth and tumors specifically coincide together, right? Cancer and tumor growth is associated with Pluto, and I'm not gonna go on a tangent and spiral into kind of what I was getting fixated on last night, but there is going to be some squares between Jupiter and Pluto in the upcoming year. A couple in November and then a couple in July. So be aware that if you have any predispositions for cancer, or you have any kind of, cancer in remission, or any kind of digestive issues, or a fatty liver, or anything like that, you need to be aware of this and get that checked regularly and make sure that you are on top of whatever you need to do. Maybe you need to change your entire daily routine and your health regimen to make sure that this does not become a negative repercussion throughout this year. We just started with Jupiter in Libra. You've got some time. Do not let it get the best of you, and do not wait. Tauruses, I know you're really bad about getting up and getting going. This is very important to get up and get going now. Not many people get this opportunity to get a heads up warning in advance, and take advantage of it. I know you guys have hearing problems too, so, just pay attention. I'm trying to be an asshole, oh my god, I swear. But anyway, I have what is it? I have Eris, the really mischievous kind of shit starter, aspect going right over my moon right now, so I'm antagonistic, I'm sorry. But anyway, so then we go into Gemini, and I kind of touched base on Gemini a little bit, but Gemini, so you're, if we're talking about Gemini sun, we're going to look, and you're going to see Jupiter in your 5th house. Yeah, so romance, children, creativity. So if you have any hobbies or any entrepreneur business things that you're trying to do, this will be the chance to get that going off the ground. You might be able to get financed. You might just make a breakthrough with it. You might be with child. You might be contemplating on having kids at this point. You might be expecting grandkids even, depending on how old you are. You might be renewing a commitment, getting into a new relationship, that sort of thing. So, just think of kind of like what's going on with me, and I'm not saying everybody's going to manifest like that, but that at least gives you a real example in context. So then we look at Cancer. So Cancer is going to be in the 4th house for Jupiter, and the 4th house is Cancer's house, so the house of home. So you're going to be expanding or having good fortune or blessings within the home. So for a Cancer, that would translate to harmonious home environment. You might be expanding or building onto your house. You might be expanding your family or the people that you live with specifically. Just to give another example, my boyfriend is a Cancer. So coincidentally enough, if you notice how mine coincides, I'm going to be traveling to go live with him. And simultaneously, he's going to be expanding his home. And, at least from his perspective that I can tell, he seems to be a lot happier when I'm present. So he will be expanding, his family life or his home with me. being in addition to that, and then he'll have good fortune and happier things, and like that both of those kind of like add up to kids too. But let's not get that carried away. Shh. I'm not saying that because I am trying to insinuate that I want kids. Just astrologically, expanding the 4th house and then expanding the 5th house usually translates directly to kids. So shh, we're done. We're done with that. We're gonna go on now. Okay, so we're going to now touch base with Leo. Leo, Jupiter's going to be in your 3rd house. 3rd house rules all the Gemini features, so communication, your immediate environment, commuting, neighbors, siblings, that sort of thing. So you may be reconnecting with your old roots, your old neighborhoods. You might be more involved in your community in general. You might have to be involved in your community. There might be some sort of burden, like, for example, if there was a natural disaster and you guys are all screwed and you're outside together, that could translate to that specifically, actually. And with that square with Pluto, the couple places of that, on a environmental or physiological thing, Jupiter usually is associated with crazy weather, and Pluto has to do with, all kinds of power and potential earthquakes, volcanic activity, and, the explosive kind of things, and that could be translated to weather. So depending on other aspects, that could actually be an issue that you might want to think about. But on the positive side, you have a chance to grow with your siblings, to reconnect with your familiar environment, your home. So just another example too, the ex that I just broke up with, he's a Leo, and he was just simultaneously when Jupiter went into Libra, he went back home to his family, and he's reestablishing himself back where he was pretty much raised. So that's a direct context example there. So then we go into Virgo. So the 2nd house of finances, resources, values, and just your relations in general. Well, values meaning like your integrity and stuff like that. How you perceive yourself and how you view other people. That's the only thing I really mean by relations. So you're going to have an opportunity to maybe expand your resources, have not a promotion, but you boost your income, become more financially stable, invest in real estate. It wouldn't be inheritance, but just something to where you are expanding your commodities in general. You might even, depending on other aspects going on, because Virgo, you just did have Jupiter go over your 1st house. So you've been there, done that with what Libra's now going to go through. So you might actually be experiencing like a higher sense of self-worth and self-esteem from all the changes in growth and benefic effects that transpired when Jupiter went over your 1st house of self. So then we go into Libra, and I already talked about that. Your 1st house. Be concerned about the liver thing. You're going to get fat. Unless you really, really work hard to avoid it. And I would love to see if somebody actually consciously decides, if they're a Libra, to try to make sure that they don't gain any weight. And get back to me and let me know. Because I'm convinced that, I know that if you are aware of some aspects, that you can maybe, soften the blow a little bit. But I've come to terms with the fact that you cannot completely avoid something just because you know about it. It just doesn't happen like that. We are the microcosmic, that is the macrocosmic. It is bigger than us. We do not have the capacity to contain that and avoid it. So anyway, then we go into Scorpio. Scorpio, you're going to have Jupiter in your 12th house. I just went through that last year, and I'm pretty sure, I mean, granted, my Jupiter is in that house in my natal chart, but all I know is that I used to, it's not that I'm not extrovert anymore, but I went from, I know I started becoming kind of like a hermit or a homebody for a while, just because of events that happened where I had to be, in on bed rest. But I went from just kind of like lingering at home and avoiding people to locking myself in like a 4x4 bathroom for hours on end and taking books in there and an extension cord and locking myself and taking food in there because there was so much things I was trying to process in my own head, ideas and like just scenarios that I'm just imagining. Like I have Sun square Neptune in my natal chart, and yeah, I'm sure that contributed to it. It had to have, but I just could not handle any kind of external stimuli because there's so much. And granted, I have been growing a lot more on an esoteric, spiritual kind of thing, becoming a bit more open-minded with certain things. Well, I think it's way beyond more open-minded now, but I used to be more or less an atheist, and it's gone. I don't even have time, and I'm not even going to go there to explain where I'm at now. But that's my usual MO. I go from one extreme to the other. Anyway, so then we move on to Sagittarius. Sagittarius, you're going to be having Jupiter in the 11th house, and in my personal opinion, I think that's the most terrifying thing ever. To have something that's expansive and uncontainable in the house that you can't control. So yes, the 11th house is supposed to represent like hopes, dreams, wishes, aspirations, goals, etc., etc. Sociological institutions, basically branches of people and groups and places that you don't have direct control over or eyes on. And that translates to nothing that you can control. So something that can like expand and be excessive and not have any way of, regulating itself in the house that you can't control, that sounds terrifying. So you could be, I would say that you're kind of like, you're getting a little too carried away with like your aspirations, you're putting too much on your plate. You might be expanding your social networks, and any of your connections, that sort of thing. You might be getting some sort of promotion or something like that if you work for the community at large and that sort of thing, or organizations. That would be a good thing to start an organization in. That's as good as positive as I think I can get with that. So then we look at Capricorn, and so Jupiter's going to be in your 10th house of career, reputation, and that's your midhaven, obviously. So you're going to be having good fortune, like a promotion likely in your career. You might have some sort of positive light shed on your reputation. You might become some sort of very influential or important figure within your community at large, or specifically wherever you work. And then we go into Aquarius, into the 9th house. So the 9th house is the Jupiter house, so it has to do with travel, knowledge, expanding one's mind, and religion. So you could be traveling, you could be you could be finishing school, learning something new, or you could be accepting religion into your life, or you could just get stuck in your head. Aquariuses are manic, neurotic. I have a couple of Aquarius friends that'll vouch for that. And having, the house that is the higher vibration of your mind, and having Jupiter, the excessive, uncontrollable thing, and then mixing it with the neurotic kind of mannerisms or behavior of Aquarius, you might kind of lose your marbles a little bit. So be aware of that, and if you're aware of your behavior and you can kind of just at least acknowledge it, try to soften the blow, or get third parties involved to help you soften the blow. That's all I can say. Then we look at Pisces, we'll be in the 8th house of death, inheritance, and disease. So this could mean quite a few things here. So disease, if you have some sort of chronic illness, acute illness, or anything like that, or anything that could potentially turn terminal, i.e. cancer, by the way, or something to do with like your liver, This is the worst house. I guess it's kind of a tie with the 6th house. I would say that the 8th house is actually worse because, yes, the 6th house has to do with health, but it doesn't guarantee that there's going to be health issues. It just, that health is going to be an emphasis in something that you need to look at. And when you jump to the 8th house, it's just straight up disease. It has nothing to do with the health. It's like the repercussions of you not doing what the 6th house wanted you to do. So, guaranteed, if you are a Pisces sun and you have any kind of medical concerns or conditions, something where organs could swell, something to do with your liver, or any kind of chronic things that could potentially turn terminal, those are absolutely high priority. I don't know how to make this sound positive at all for you, honestly, to be honest. Besides the fact that you might be more of accepting to go with God, but I mean, like, most Pisces are usually like that. The only Pisces I know that isn't is, like, my father, and I don't even know his chart information or anything, I swear. Like, yeah. He must be, like, barely a Pisces, and, like, everything else is Aries, because that's, I swear. But, anyway, so there's also the inheritance thing. So, Pisces, if you happen to be having some sort of trust or, you know, older relatives or potential will, you know, kind of separations and you're getting something, that might potentially happen. If you are unaware of potentially an older relative that would be giving you some sort of inheritance being sick or dying, they might die in this next year. Just to give you a heads up. I'm not trying to, like, upset you or freak you out, but I always feel like the best thing I can do, and instead of, you know, just keeping it to myself when I'm fairly sure that somebody's gonna die, I'm like, okay, I'm just letting you know, so and so's gonna die soon. I was like, I know that this is hard, and obviously don't go get them worked up, but go speak your piece, say what you need to say, make sure that you got everything off your chest before they go. Because the heavy weight of regret of not saying or doing something with somebody you can no longer see again is way worse than you pretending everything's okay and swallowing it and then realizing what you didn't do or didn't say after they're already gone. That just being said. And so others resources as well. So that kind of just ties into the inheritance thing. And you could die. You know, the whole death thing. I think it would be directly caused by disease. But since Pluto actually rules over earthquakes, and I have that earthquakes tracker app, oh my god, that thing goes off 24 hours a day. And why is there so many different rings for different kinds of earthquakes? Like, depending on the magnitude, it like has so many different ringtones. It must be killing my memory with how many different sounds it makes, because it's made a different sound every time it's gone off, and I've had it on my phone for about a week. But you could potentially, with all the earthquakes going on, you could die from said earthquake, because we also have still, it's out of orb now, but we have the residual influence and effects of Neptune square Saturn. Neptune has to do with environment and, you know, the climate in general, and the Mother Earth in a sense, and then Saturn obviously having to do with the foundation, the crust, and the land masses and the plates, and yeah, so, and obviously Pisces is associated with Neptune, and Neptune's in Pisces, so you get what I'm saying here. You could potentially be one of those poor casualties that it's the wrong place, wrong time, and dies in an earthquake or some sort of, like, catastrophic natural disaster. Not trying to make you paranoid, Pisces, I'm sorry. This was supposed to be positive, and okay. The inheritance thing, I guess, is as best you can get, and getting closer to God if you already aren't there. This is as good as it's gonna get, Pisces, I'm sorry. But that's it, guys. I was supposed to make this positive, but, you know, I went without a script, and, you know, I stuck to who I am. I turned it into a huge fucking gloom and doom scary thing at the end of it. But you know what? If you still watch my videos, it's because you love me for it. So, that's Jupiter in Libra. So just in general, Libra has to do with the law, marriage, partnerships, business partners, intimate relations, commitments, that sort of thing. Those are going to be the general theme for everyone that will be high priority, or at least be continually happening throughout the year. So if you're a person that's kind of like in an entrepreneur spot, you can more than likely, feel secure that it's likely going to be something with business. If you're engaged, you might be, planning the wedding now or something like that. That sort of thing. So, yeah, but that's it. So, I'm just going to go. And I'll probably talk in a transit talk and next month, or if not sooner, if I start to get really paranoid or manic about it, about some of the aspects specifically to do with Jupiter and Pluto and my interpretations of what will transpire in the United States around the time of the election, which is very scary. I'm going to go now, though. Keep you on your toes. If you're freaking out, you're going to have to wait. See you guys.